Okay, so Sam's going to try and put up his Q&A thing now. Apparently, some of the questions have been slightly dubious. What a surprise!
Do you need help?
So yeah, the idea now was to, I don't know if this will work, but let's try. Was actually to open up the floor a bit. But I think happy to talk about a few subjects, take questions, and any questions for some of the people from ARM as well. I've got a few canned questions that I've heard people speak, but I'm going to start with asking anyone if they want to put up their hand. If that fails, we'll then move to Sam, who will read out questions like, what is your favourite beer? And then I'll take it further. So yeah, has anyone got any particular subjects? If we start with maybe questions, things that we haven't answered, things that were confusing, or things that are just on your mind. Is there any that anyone would like to start with anything like that?
So how about multiple languages supporting that embedded community? So we notice that it's only English and the Japanese. It could be like Chinese or Germany. More language supporting.
Yes, yeah. I mean, at the moment it's been very much demand driven by who's asking us to add language support. But there's two sides to that. There's the language support in the tools, like buttons and stuff. And then there's the community as well. And we've always wanted to look at ways of one of the challenges is...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry. The question was about multiple languages support within the mbed community. I was saying that in the tools, it's fairly straightforward to have different, languages for different buttons and that sort of thing. But for the community, we want to avoid fragmenting the community into language-specific silos. If you know what I mean. So we're looking at ways of perhaps auto-translating parts of the site, depending on what language you want to see. But yes, we'll certainly look at adding the extra language there.
The language is definitely a barrier for some supercomputers.
Yeah.
So as a question back to you then, so yeah, as Dan said, one of the things I guess I'd push back on this right at the start was I didn't want to split things, but that may have been a bad choice. So technology doesn't solve all problems. So from your point of view, do you think actually just going the sort of dumb route of different forums, different languages, trying to get pages translated into different languages, do you think that's actually worthwhile?
I think that definitely will be helpful to have existing page translated into the language. Because I see that I noticed the map. The map showed this morning that if you look into the China area, there's only few dots here. Yeah. I think one of the dots is me. But the number is quite few comparing to Japan, comparing to North America. I think there can be a couple of reasons, but definitely language is one of the reasons. So try to sort of explore some options, whether we can have a better support in multiple language, or we have a robber translating existing resource into multiple language. That will be perfect if we can reuse the existing resource rather than have a separate forum on Chinese and
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the things we want to look at adding, is having a different language version of all the documentation that's out there. Similar to Wikipedia, if you've seen that. Each page has different language versions, and they're added as available. And we definitely look at doing the same sort of thing.
So I guess the other thing is we're probably learning a bit here. So Water joined us to be our first application engineer in Japan, and I think one thing we want to learn from that is we know there's a lot of Japanese activity on the site. We don't know what the hell it's talking about because we don't speak Japanese. But actually, having someone local can really help there. And I think we probably actually want. Our goal is to learn because it's we use so widely in Japan. Actually, to learn with that, talk about what we can do given that there is a lot of activity. And then I think next on our list is, we'll be travelling to China next month to go and talk to various companies here and potentially hire an application engineer in China as well. So, but I think we're probably going to use Japan as the learning experience about what is possible and what works, and then try and replicate that, because I don't think we have a good answer at the moment. But yeah, understanding priorities of documentation or buttons in tools or forums, or what's important, what isn't important, that would really be helpful if people can provide feedback. So I don't think we have the answer there at the moment.
So with RS-232 that you have already got the UART support, multiple UART support actually on the Android. But have you ever thought about going ahead with the RS-485 protocol being ported to the Android somehow? Because I've been looking at a couple of industrial applications where only RS-485 is supported. I cannot use the Android in that case. Yeah.
So it's not an API we've supported as standard. If I haven't actually checked if there is a 485 support. So is there?
In hardware.
Oh, there's in hardware. So yeah, if it's something that some community members start developing and it seems to be popular, then yeah, maybe that could be pulled mainstream. So if you think back to the perhaps the slide that Emilio showed, the model we definitely want to do is actually there is this wild west of people doing random bits of code. And as they become popular, we want to understand how to sort of bring them under the fold of better management and better licensing and those sorts of things, and potentially become part of the core API if that's deemed valuable enough. So it's not something I've seen lots of. I've not seen lots of it, but if that's the sort of route we would like it to take. It probably indicates we're doing something wrong about letting that percolate up to the top if it is quite popular. Yeah. But that would be what we'd like to improve, is that route through.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about over the last year the switch to making things more open source. Because like when I start with the mbed, a lot of things were closed. It seems like I'm happy that things are becoming more and more.
Yeah. So I guess that whether was it the right choice? I still believe it was the right choice. So we wanted to build a platform that we had a lot of control over to understand where the control points needed to be to avoid fragmentation. That was I'm talking from my personal direction that I put over this and said this is where we're going to go. So I guess the long-term goal was open source. I don't think we knew when the right time was going to be, and I was adamant so we actually started it as an open source project. Probably most people don't realise that. And then I closed it because people, the actual bit, I wanted to change people's behaviour. What they were doing is they were coming along, and then they were blaming the libraries as being where the bugs were. So they would start fiddling with the libraries, and then of course it wasn't there, it was in their application code. So I was like, right, I'm going to lock that down and force people to tell me when the APIs are wrong. I'm going to force them to assume that it's their problem, or tell us that the libraries are broken. And try and get to that point where there was a trust and also a control of our source code, so we owned all the source code, so we could open source it in a very controlled way. Should we have done it earlier? Possibly. Yeah. But this is partly why we hired Emilio. Yeah. So Emilio was one of the people shouting that this is holding you back. This is holding you back. And I was saying, I don't believe it's holding you back at the right time, but I want to hire you, because I want you to keep convincing me that when is the right time, and he did a great job of doing that. So that's the sort of backstory. And we still want to make sure that we do manage this code in such a way that it can be used commercially. But that's the history. Whether it's the right choice, I don't know. I think actually it's turned out pretty well. But yeah, maybe I was holding on too long. But that's the background. Yes. Okay.
I have a follow-up question on the Senate department. Is there anything that stops anybody from doing his own live and releasing it?
Can I take that?
Yes, I did a quick search, and there are some examples of using 485 with the mbed. And I know the 1769 one was supported in hardware, for example. So there's nothing to stop you from writing a driver, and there are a couple of examples.
Okay, so in a sense that if something is not in the platform, you don't just sit there and wait until it's actually added.
Yeah, if there's a sensor you want to use and there's no driver for it, you're free to write your own library. You can even publish that back so that other people can benefit and they don't have to recreate the wheel themselves as well. So, yeah,
Did you add 5 minutes, 2 minutes on the hardware abstraction layer in that diagram that Ludo showed hours ago? We had one block that was showing hardware abstraction layer. Did you just go ahead just a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll hand over to these guys to talk about it. If that's
It has been engineered. Thank you. It has been a fundamental layer when we started supporting multiple microcontrollers, and we knew since the beginning that it was going to be needed, but we wanted to have enough use cases to be sure that we engineered it correctly. So we waited, for example, for supporting a second silicon vendor to scale before actually being quite confident that we are designing it right. And so far, we started receiving contributions from the community, adding support for microcontrollers from other silicon vendors, and it's apparently it's working well. So yes, we are pretty happy, and just to highlight which are the main advantages of that is that now when we want to engage with another silicon vendor, the engineering effort is very focused on just implementing this hardware abstraction layer for the new family of microcontrollers. And after that, all the common code that we use and make available.
Did that all answer your question? Yeah, so the previous question about, people can just write drivers. I think, again, some of the comments were they might write it in a very specific way for a specific chip. If it becomes popular, you might sort of encourage it to become more of a standard so it can be supported. Any other burning questions at the moment? So I guess I had my other thing was, what are the sort of the opportunities, or what would you like us to be doing? I mean, are there certain things that you think actually would be really helpful to your business or to your, to your developers or something like that? Is there something that you think we're missing a trick? That's good if you can't come up with anything, or you've lost interest now.
Actually, I would make the point that you kind of like managed folks, what I would call a target side solution with all these protocol stacks and the IDE into one thing, and there will be, if you go back to more the established embedded providers, they've got their own in-house tool infrastructure. They're probably going to say, why can't we have your target side stack separately available? We can bring it into our build environment. So I'd say that's a possible thing that you might want to look at, having more flexibility from the target side code for other build environments beyond just that.
Okay. Yes. Well, we might have a good answer for you there.
No, I know you did have a slide earlier.
No, it's a really good question there. Yeah.
So summarizing the question is about supporting multiple tool chains or supporting target-specific code.
I think it's the ability for someone who's say already got their own, say they're very committed to IAR.
Oh right, yes.
And they bring in the target side content into their whole environment and build and debug with that rather than using that.
Absolutely, but in fact we support exporting to all these tool chains. So you can just take any project on the bedrock side and export it for the IAR tool chain. And actually, from our LD, you can generate also the project files, so you can actually work in the IAR workbench. Workbench, yes. And similarly with the most popular tool chains and IDs. And actually, again, we tried to have quite a clean and simple architecture to provide to implement that. So it should be easy for additional tool vendors to add additional exporters, and they can just simply contribute this to our project, and we will be happy to enable it in our app.
How does the code get tested and stuff? Done, or who does that?
So initially, of course, it was my responsibility to prove that it was going to work. I did all the testing on the web library to verify that it was working correctly on IAR, GCC, the different flavors. The biggest difficulty with the GCC was the difference in the C standard libraries that were released with different IDs and different environments.
What was the GCC target
well, at the moment we support Code Red and LPC Expresso, GCC ARM, Plain, that's it, and set of libraries, and Code Sorcerer, of course.
This is, sorry, a side question. Does ARM have any plans to have used the Monaro compiling with the microcontrollers, or is Monaro compiled just for Linux?
It is very here, so enjoy that again.
Yeah, so I didn't introduce, this is Jerry from our Shanghai team who work on the GCC ARM toolchain.
Basically, Narrow compiler is for Linux. So there's some effort trying to use Narrow in pt.11, but you haven't seen anybody trying to use that in the MCU yet. There's some Codex A customer who use that in the future for the performance measurement and battery station. But basically, it's not for MCU. For MCU, it's GCC ARM.
Yeah, did that answer your question? No, that was just...
Yeah, no, I think about the question. It sounds like sounds okay.
It's trying to be toolchain agnostic, have the ability for code to be toolchain agnostic. Yes. There's effort in doing that because C libraries and things like that are different, but that is exactly what our platform is trying to hide, such that your user application doesn't need to, it knows a standard memory model, it doesn't have to worry about compiler intrinsics, etc., etc. That's the plan, yeah.
To piggyback on the export, do you allow importing from Eclipse IR? So we just added export team, which RIP goes to. I would like to have those customers be able to import.
It's not exhaustive our approach because so first of all the thing that tend to be extremely toolchain dependent are quite limited, to be honest. If well architectured, if the platform is well architectured. So at the moment the main things are the startup code, the linker scripts, and the C library targeting. And once that is in place, theoretically you should just be able to copy any library piece of code and simply import it in the idea as it is. And actually the main approach to make it possible is that we don't require our users to write things that are made files. our build system automatically scans the resources in the user workspace and automatically basically generates stuff, creating the correct compiles directives and finding the link. And we have added a couple of conventions to make it possible, of course, to separate clearly the small percentage of code that is target dependent or region dependent. But yes, I mean, if you have specific examples of things that are difficult to be done now, please just record them to us and to work perhaps on improving it. But at the moment, the experience has been pretty decent. The experience of importing external code to our build environment.
So I guess, yeah, to add to that, the model we really want to see is if, let's say, someone started a project in some Eclipse environment, they would actually be using the SDK. They would just pull the SDK in to Eclipse and start working on it, and then maybe they publish that, and then someone uses it on the online ID. If it was just random C code, to be honest, we're less interested in just pulling that into mbed because it kind of defeats the purpose. If people are pulling in random C code, we kind of want them to get rid of the startup files and the weird, specific stuff, and just pull in the library aspects and do a little bit of porting, because that's where the value comes from. But yeah, in terms of working on different toolchains, if they're using the SDK, then it should just work. Yeah, at least that's our goal, and it seems to work quite well. Did you have any questions on that?
Just to start from earlier, we go back to
Good again, yeah.
what we do on this year.
Yeah?
Do you expect mbed to pursue the maker market? I mean, the maker market, has been dominated by the AVR and the Arduino, and obviously it has, advantages for very simple projects. But as your project grows and your functionality starts growing, and you start seeing the implications of that platform. I mean, you obviously are focused on the Internet of Things, and that's a great strategy. But I mean, the maker group is actually also growing very quickly, and in some instances, once the developers become familiar with the AVR and the Arduino, I mean, they're committed to that platform. So, I mean, I think it would be to mbed's advantage, I guess, to participate on Maker first, for example.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, I guess to go back to some of our philosophy, we decided we didn't want to build an educational platform or a hobbyist platform. We wanted to build a professional platform. We're not there yet, we're still not done, there's still work to do. But I guess our assumption was if we could build a professional platform that the industry wanted, then education, hobbyists and makers would totally be able to take advantage of that in the same way as you take advantage of AutoCAD or Adobe Illustrator or Word, PowerPoint or something. You don't use education slide maker because they'd be rubbish. So if we could build something that the industry wanted, then and could fund effectively, then there'd be a real advantage for everyone else. But you're exactly right that we haven't, I guess, been focused on maker stuff. But what's interesting now is obviously, so we do obviously talk to, like I say, the Arduino guys now that they have ARM platforms. So we're not going to go and support AVR platforms. We're not going to do that. But now that there's ARM platforms, we're very much looking at what technology we can help provide that can help them as well. So yeah, I think you're right that we probably will put a bit of focus on sort of maker markets and
what about maybe expanding there's a single book or a single textbook, I guess, on mbed, whereas with Arduino you find, I mean, you search on Amazon, there are maybe several dozen Arduino. Is there any effort like promoting people that write textbooks on embedded applications that may be pursuing the
So up until now we've been focusing on people in education writing on ARM, so on Cortex-M or something like that. that's been our focus. The one that was done on mbed was an experiment really to see how that went down. It went down quite well. But yeah, up until now we've been focused very much on Cortex-M. I think if this does become a platform that's widely used, then it would be more natural to promote those sorts of things. So Dan Deering was telling me earlier about to make sure I mentioned the ARM Accredited Engineer Program, which is about learning about Cortex-M and these sort of things, and actually we're starting to use mbed in those sorts of applications as well. So I think it will happen more. We definitely want to get it right for the professional market, because we think if we do that, that's actually how as an industry we can invest in this properly, and then everyone benefit from that. But you're right, we're also looking for other ways to support other projects as well, even if they're not under the mbed public banner supporting. As ARM, we want to support these projects anyway, because we don't want there to be one answer.
Is there an M4 version in the work?
Yes. Okay. Was there any interesting things at work?
I think a few people were interested in what the U-Blocks system is going to cost. So
I don't know that.
I don't know either. Is somebody from U-Blocks, do you have that information yet? Or
Yeah, if you go to our website, I will show you links to the online store that we have. So depending on what modem you select, you will get the
let's see.
There's a US and European online store.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there an embed meetup locally?
So that's an interesting one. So we set this meeting up as an experiment, not as a developer meeting, but as a partner meeting, right? Because we wanted to understand this. But also Waterize been running some events in Japan. There's actually a committee, is that right? No, it's not related to ARM, but a committee that runs these around Japan. And I think we're going to open that up to other groups around the world. People run these sorts of things, but I think we do actually see that there's an opportunity to sort of have semi-official ones where we can provide a bit of hardware or some support or some advertising for these groups. Yeah, so if you're interested in this sort of thing, have a chat with Waterize, and I think we maybe expand that sort of thing that's been. How many years has it run in Japan?
2 years.
3 years, yeah. So we might use. Those guys are quite interested in talking to other people who want to do it around the world, and we'll try and do it at that, because I think we understand developers aren't going to travel very far. It needs to be local. I had one canned question that I really liked. It's a canned question because I'm going to replay it, but Michael asked me about the licensing of software on our site, and I'm very interested in feedback on this one. So at our core of what we wanted to do, we wanted to make a lot of software available under open source licenses that are commercially friendly to proliferate and drive down the cost. But we do get asked quite a lot about people who want to publish code and sell it, or it's got some restrictions, or they only want to make it available as object code, or they want to have a EULA or something like that. And we've toyed with this, but I just wondered if anyone had any comments or questions or recommendations in this area. What was your scenario?
We have some touch sensing hardware IP in the Freescale devices that we have libraries for. That is just some standard legalese around how that library can be used. So today we deploy that outside of mbed with a simple click-through license. And we're looking for ways to possibly bring that and other technology like that into mbed, and just trying to mesh the different realities as they are today and see what the options are. So just exploring the different licenses.
And what makes sense to you?
It's actually a very difficult question down to it with the possibility of putting things out on GitHub, right? You're not going to click through a license there, obviously. So just embedding the licensing in the source and referring to the license is a common practice, I know, but much like other big semiconductor companies, Freescale employs a lot of lawyers, and that may not be a suitable solution for them. So I don't know. We're just playing with the idea. I personally love the open source and the Apache license that you guys have adopted. We're doing more and more in that area, but there's always going to be that little piece of IP that you want to protect, and just interested in exploring ways that we can do that, but in the openness of mbed somehow.
And is there anyone else in similar situations?
Well, it's common with a cloud platform, and we have this basic protocol connectivity in our. I'm from Exida, but we have the discussion within the company that okay, if we want to start to enhance that with our micro agent technology, it'd be nice to be able to have some WULA that at least talks about, hey, you can only use this as long as you connect to our platform.
Okay. So it's more limiting it to a certain use case.
Well, in our particular case, that happens to be, we have some IP with it that we like to keep.
So I think at the moment our core thing we're working on is we're going against that actually a bit. We kind of want to push against that and people capturing value where there isn't enough value to capture versus the cost of it not being available. But at the same time, I think we want to be pragmatic. So I am interested in this area.
I mean, not to monopolize, but I think it's all where you want to go. I mean, if you want to build out mbed with open source only, you're going to get one result. If you were to build it out with EULA only, you get one result. My guess is that the optimal over time will be a combination of the two.
Yeah, so I was saying to Michael, we'd been considering a parental filter where effectively your legal department could approve, code under the official mbed license, but nothing else, let's say. So, because what we want to do is an engineer to be able to sit down with almost blanket rights to start developing with this thing, and that work with their legal framework. Because if they can't do that, then they're not going to bother. They're going to end up trying to write it themselves and waste a load of time because they don't want to open a legal request. And so the idea we can filter code and say, well, actually, this is all under the the approved license, so you don't even get to see the dirty other stuff. That's a compromise that I actually quite like. But again, I don't think we know that that's the right answer. But we definitely want to be in a position where an engineer can get approval, pre-approval, in a controlled company, a company with good IPR processes to get approval to use mbed and the flexibility and productivity it gives. So we don't want to let that go, because if we let that go, that's a real missed opportunity. So that's why we're being quite careful around this area. Yep.
If I'm allowed to reflect your question back to you, what are your plans about Sentinel licensing? Well, just in general, it seems like various bits of it are now getting released in different ways. Some you can run on your own servers and so on.
So I think Zach wants to answer that one. You might get a different answer from me. That's what he says.
Oh, wireless mic. This is work. My mic doesn't do anything. I don't need the mic. I can talk now. No, it's a very good question. I think this is something that, like a lot of software companies, we have always been, and as ARM, we are also a software company. So we license software to our customers. You have to be really careful about licenses, even free licenses, dual licensing, etc. So what we've always done is we've provided all of our software under a free developer license, which is just an EULA, which says that where the rights are, this is commercial software, but you get to use it for free. It's a quick free. We actually have a free developer release that we normally release this week, Wednesday, and we'll be releasing that on the arm.com webpage. So that's the EULA. So the same library we've released now in mbed, it's under the same EULA. So we didn't do anything special. We just took our standard EULA, and we put that under the mbed, and there you go. It was easy for us as a software vendor.
So it's source code?
Not the free developer version. That particular C library is a binary. But what we do then is when somebody licenses our commercial software, enterprise version, then we give under commercial version of the license everything. A lot more source code, no restrictions, etc. It's kind of a free developer versus full version for both our commercial licenses.
So can you give us some sense of what your commercial license terms are going to be?
So license terms are pretty typical. I mean, we do a software license for using the whole solution. But the Sentinel business model is a little like ARM in general. It's a license to use software and devices. We try to make it as easy as possible and benefit from scale. That's our general philosophy. But it really depends on what kind of partner we have. Operator or an OEM, or is it a silicon partner, which usually just partnering with channels. Depends on who it is.
So, I mean, ARM's typical model for IP licensing is an upfront license cost plus royalties. Is that a similar model then?
Today, we're very low on upfront costs. We're typically pretty simple maintenance and support, and then we're mainly royalties. That's today.
I think this is something we can learn from as well. So it may be that there's a standard commercial license that we can provide for people. Again, that potentially doesn't work for lots of reasons as well. So this is where we'll be learning a lot about this, and this is where we want a lot of feedback really to get the right model.
But I think the right thing to do is exactly what you guys at Frisco are doing as well. Many people already have free click-through EULAs. The right thing to do is to enable somebody to publish a binary library, enable them to just post their own EULA text, and probably without doing any extra legal work, you're good to go. But I think it's also good to support the open source model. So if somebody can dual license open source their code or single license, you enable that through mbed. I think it's great to have both models, even EULA with source code. There's no problem with providing source code under EULA.
Yeah, I think one thing we know we can do, and we want to do, is that you know the heritage of the code you're looking at. So you can almost get the printout. Here's the all the open source components. Here's this special EULA. Here's this special EULA. This is what your legal team needs to sign off. That level we can probably do, and it's whether we do, how much we control try and influence what that licensing is. But I think Zach's right. There's something there we haven't got to the conclusion there. So any feedback on that, not now but afterwards, would be really useful. There's a hand flying around over there.
Yeah, it's slightly different. I mean, I think one of the things to learn from the explosion in mobile applications was that if you allow developers to actually make more money on it, you suddenly have millions and millions of applications. And there may be something in that business model that you guys want to have a think about, because we know how big that ecosystem is today.
So that's another really good question. So yeah, we have thought about that one a lot. So our current conclusion is that, in general, for the good of the industry, trying to promote a model of packaging bits of software and someone selling it is not the right model. Because actually packaging embedded codes that is going to be integrated into other people's code is not the same as an app store. So you can't kid yourself that there's going to be millions of reusable pieces of embedded code that are high enough value to support a developer doing product support, but low enough cost that people will buy it. I think when there's big pieces of code like the nanoservice platform or maybe certain features, I think there really is an opportunity there. But our take on it is a similar model but with a twist, which is we actually want to encourage contracting. So we'd prefer people to publish open source code that is used by lots of people, and as a mechanism to help get products out the door, it's very likely that person's going to get contracting work out of it because someone takes that library, they say, can I do it slightly differently? Can you help me get this product shipped? So that's good for two reasons, because it's way easier to become a contractor than a product company. Most contractors aspire to be a product company because then you can just sit on the couch and wait for the money to come in. But most people start as a contractor. It's exactly like that. But the other thing is, actually for the industry, that's really powerful. If you have lots of people available to contract on lots of areas of expertise, as someone who wants to get a product out the door, you can tap into all these resources. And one of the things we want to do on mbed is kind of flatten the world in terms of access to all this expertise. So if I was going to say one thing we really want to go after, it is enabling the collaboration and the contracting off the back of people showing their CV in the code that they produce and the work that they do and things like that. That's on number one, because we think that can be massive, versus trying to package up bits of embedded code and convincing yourself it's going to be the same as Apple, which we don't really believe. But I think as a secondary model, selling software is definitely there. But I think our primary model, we want to enable people to get products out the door through contracting. That's our real number. So we didn't talk about that, but as you brought it up, that's one of the things I think there's a real opportunity. So I'm kind of interested in starting to wrap this up, so we can go to the bar if that's all right. I don't know why I'm asking permission from you. I'm asking permission from you. But does anyone got any last questions or any particular subjects they want to bring up? I don't really want to drag this on too much. It's really useful to understand the gut reactions of people. If not, I just want to flick through a few things and close this meeting out, and then you can go home or you can join us at the bar. So let me just this a bit. Right, so I really just. Oh, can I take the battery? It's down. Oh, is it right now? Okay, well, I can be quick anyway. So I kind of just wanted to take an opportunity to wrap up. So we talked about technology and why it's magic, and John sort of put that in context. So our ARM is very interested in enabling the world and our partners to be very successful in this area. I also obsess over people not really knowing what they're talking about, even though they're highly technical, and why things might surprise you. I think fundamentally what we're proposing here is that we've seen this with web and we've seen this with smartphone apps. This is going to happen again. This is what mbed is assuming this is the case. This is one of our prerequisites, this assumption. And we want, what we're focused on very much is the platform era for embedded development. That's where all of our decisions are driven by, and all of our trade-offs. Even if we are actually in this class here. And I think the thing that's really changed it for us this year is we've seen this opportunity with these different types of partners, and that's what we took to the board and said there's a real opportunity to help ARM's ecosystem here if we get this right, if we realise that there's all these different people that we want to support. So that's really what's been the change this year. So we're about to grow up, I think, is the fundamental thing. We're very focused on enabling Cortex-M as a platform for IoT, and we're focused on consolidating all of these technologies, and hopefully this is giving access to all of the technologies that you provide in the room. Hopefully we've given you a chance to meet some of the team that are behind it. These are the guys that slave away every day, trying to build this thing. Any guidance that you can give us, any insights you can give us, any feedback you can give us, helps make sure that effort is in the right direction. So again, thank you for taking the time to speak to us, and please continue to do so. I guess we talked about our SDK objectives, about moving embedded software forward a bit. We really think there's an opportunity to change the equation here, and with the HDK mirroring that to actually people build hardware, especially as we move into wireless. We think this is really important. You've seen a bit about why we think online development, and by this we don't mean like an online compiler, we mean development, connected development is potentially a really interesting way to increase productivity with developers across the world. The sort of services we've been building, that we've pioneered in our online IDE, that we potentially want to start opening up a bit more as well. Hopefully you understood that. And we're focused very much on the things, but I think we understand that talking with these other aspects is really essential to us. Seeing some cool demos. Hopefully you got the point that we think Bluetooth Smart is going to be interesting, we think cellular is going to be interesting, and we think Internet of Things is going to be interesting. Hopefully you've got a feel of CoAP, and CoAP being effectively the HTTP equivalent for devices. It's a really interesting technology. It's maturing well, and I think its time is now. So this is a really interesting time for us, and obviously we're really looking forward to working with the Sentinel guys to make this a real success. And fundamentally, we want our mbed to be a very tangible technical collaboration between all the people in the industry who can contribute their aspect to make this real. So this is not about co-marketing, marketing and logos, although I'm sure that will be part of it. really we want this to be the technical thing to reduce barriers to entry for this sort of thing. Thank you for joining us. I hope it's been useful. Rob, yes?
Sorry, where will we get all the material from today?
We'll package it up and send it out. Okay, so what we'd like to do, so thank you for joining us. I hope it wasn't a waste of your time. I hope it was valuable to you all. What we'd like to do is send out in a couple of weeks all the information. We'll collect it all together and we'll send it out in some form that we decide, plus anything else. And we'll also send perhaps a feedback form as well, because this was the first time we've done something like this. We want to understand what was valuable, what wasn't. So that's the plan. And finally, if you're free this evening, come and join us at the firehouse and basically let's chat some more. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.